Giving myth number 3, I don't have enough worth giving. I don't have enough worth giving. Very closely related to the last myth that we talked about. But what's the truth? The truth is that little becomes much when you put it in the hands of God. I think about the story that we all know from the Gospels where Jesus was preaching to the crowd of 5,000 people, and another incident where he was preaching to 4,000. And in each case, they could just find a few fish and loaves of bread, and Jesus multiplied them to feed thousands and thousands of people. So it's not, again, about the amount that you give. It's really about the attitude, the spirit of your heart, the generosity of your soul. There was a time when Jesus and his disciples were at the temple, and people were giving their offering. And Jesus called his disciples over and pointed out the giving of a poor old widow who only put in 2 pennies. And he commended her for giving. And in Luke 21:44, it says, out of all her living. The Pharisees and the religious people were walking by and throwing in their money and making a big show and making a lot of noise about it. Were giving out of their wealth. She was giving out of her poverty. She was giving all that she had. It wasn't much compared to what other people were evaluating or judging in terms of quantity, but from the way God looked at it, he called attention to it. He praised it. It was meaningful to the Lord. Christ's standard of commendable generosity to his cause is not what we give out of our abundance, but what we give out of our deficiency, what we give out of our lack. He measures on what will be missed by the giver, what costs us as real sacrifice. Brian Cluth tells a true story. A little girl loved the Lord, and she wanted to share the message of Christ with those on the mission field. She contributed a penny to a missionary to help in the work of evangelizing the people of Burma. The missionary was so touched by the little girl's response that he decided to do the most that he could do with that penny. After careful thought, he bought a gospel pamphlet and personally gave it to a young chieftain. The chieftain would not admit that he could not read, yet he burned with a desire to know the content of the pamphlet. He traveled 250 miles to find someone who would read it to him. After hearing the gospel message read to him, it was not long after that this young chief made a profession of faith in Christ. Returning to his people, he told them what the Lord had done for him. Later, he invited missionaries to come and share Jesus with the village. Many tribes people accepted the good news and were converted. All this and probably more resulted from the one dedicated penny given in Christ's name by a little girl who gave from her heart. Every amount, no matter how small, is a seed, an investment. You will reap what you sow. You will reap more than you sow, but you will only reap after you sow. That's the law of the harvest. And speaking of seeds, how big is an apple seed? If I had an apple seed in my hand right now, it would be about this big, so big you could hardly see it. But what's in that apple seed? How many of you said apples? How many of you said an apple tree? How many of you said orchards and orchards and orchards of apple trees? Because that's the truth. The truth is that contained in that one seed is an enormous tree that will produce many more apples with many more seeds, that will produce many more trees, that will produce many more apples with many more seeds and many more trees. The potential is there. But if it's held on to, or if it's tossed carelessly away, or if it's just ignored, nothing will come as a result. Again, it's not how much you have or how little you have. It's what you do with what you have. And the truth here is that little becomes much when you put it in the hands of the Lord.